The Super Smash Bros. Games have been a big part of my life for as long as I can remember. And while most of my friends nowadays know me as that one guy that takes online Smash way too seriously, I can still enjoy some of its single player content. That said, I'm not the biggest fan of Brawl of Light, but playing through it again made me realize just how much I enjoyed the boss fights. The Smash games always had great boss battles, and today I'm counting down my favorites from throughout the series. There are a few things you should keep in mind. I don't own 64 or Melee, so there won't be any bosses from these games. That leaves me to look at the bosses from Brawl, Ultimate, and yeah, that's pretty much it. I'll be ranking them on a combination of things. Of course on how fun and challenging their fights are, but things like design, references to the source games and my personal experiences can all be taken into account. Oh, and there will be spoilers for Subspace and World of Light if that matters to anyone. But with all that out of the way, let's start this off. Okay, can I just say that I love the concept of Giga Bowser? I really like the idea of a mutated, monster-like Bowser, and while Smash 4 and Ultimate toned it down a little, in Brawl and especially Melee he's straight up nightmare fuel. Too bad that doesn't really carry over into the fight. Giga Bowser's latest boss battle reuses Bowser's movesets from Brawl, which might sound a bit weird, but come on, do you really want to see this guy do a dropkick? I think it was for the better. Almost all of his attacks are heavily telegraphed, so they can all be dodged or shielded if you react in time. And that's where my actual problem comes in. I think this boss is a bit too basic. He stands completely still for most of his attacks. There are only two where he actually moves across the stage. This just leaves him a sitting duck for most of the fight and makes his attacks even easier to dodge. And even if you get hit by them, I found his moves not killing until very late percentages, even on higher difficulties. So while I love Giga Bowser's fighting concept, I think he's held back a bit by his lack of mobility. And I feel like the developers learned from this, as most of the other bosses did it a lot better. Man, I miss Subspace Emissary. Sure, it had its flaws, but looking back at it, I like how creative Sakurai and the developers got. They even made completely unique enemies for this mode, including two bosses. We have Galeem, who's alright, and Duan, who I liked enough to make my number 9. Okay, I don't want to start every part like this, but I'm really into this robot's design. Duan is split in two halves. The blue side is all about physical attacks, while the pink one only attacks from a distance. Not the most unique concept ever, but I like it. The fight itself can be rather challenging. Since the attacks from the blue side are mostly physical, your first idea would be to keep your distance. But then he decides to launch mines or send a shockwave in your direction. Not to mention that he can suddenly charge at you or jump to the other side of the ship. The attacks from the pink side are admittedly more predictable. Every attack can be reflected or avoided rather easily. It can also launch homing missiles, which in classic Nintendo fashion can be used against itself to quickly drain its HP bar. It's really satisfying to pull this off. All in all, I really enjoy fighting this boss. I just wish they brought this guy back instead of Galeem.
What? It's just an ordinary... Oh my goodness!
Fun fact. Marx was originally so disturbing that he would have caused the game to get a higher age rating, and the developers actually had to make him less scary. Yeah, I don't even want to imagine what his attacks originally looked like. But anyways, the boss fight. Compared to the other bosses in Ultimate, he definitely sets himself apart. You can notice right away that Marx at least tries not to get hit, by the fact that he almost never stops moving around. It's seemingly even worse because he's floating high above the ground all the time. But it's actually not as bad as it seems. He might teleport around a lot, but he also tends to wait a pretty long time in between his attacks, giving you numerous chances to hit him. He does have some attacks that take quite a long time to pull off and leave him vulnerable, but he also has a fair share where you can't hit him at all and where you need to take a defensive approach. You basically need to know which attacks you can and can't punish, which makes this fight pretty difficult on your first try, but way more manageable on repeats. This fight really makes you feel like you're up against a Kirby boss, which is definitely a good thing. I have not played any Castlevania games, but the haunted castle part in World of Light was awesome. And who better to end it off with than Dracula himself. This boss consists out of two phases, and both forms provide their own unique challenge. The humanoid form is one of the few bosses to have a specific weak point. Unless you hit him in the head, he won't take any damage. I like this, since you can't just button mash to win. Well, unless you use the Belmont, then it's pretty much a normal quick play match. Nah, but seriously, this phase isn't all that difficult. He might be harder to hit, but he doesn't actually have many different attacks. But it does get more challenging when he starts combining the attacks after the halfway point. The demon form feels more like a traditional Smash boss. Most of his attacks are pretty easy to dodge, but I found myself easily getting comboed by some of them. First he'd hit me with one of his electric waves and then he'd immediately jump on me, for example. The boss as a whole poses a decent challenge, but stays fair all the way through. If this is what bosses in Castlevania feel like, I'm really interested in trying out the games. Okay, so I might not have played any Monster Hunter games either, but while I might not get all the references in the Rathalos fights, I can still appreciate this boss. This dragon has a ton of ways to kill you. It can attack from both the air and the ground using fireballs, stun you with his roar, and even poison you with his claws. It's also interesting to point out that this is the only boss in Ultimate where items appear during its classic mode fights. Not only that, but they all reference weapons from the Monster Hunter series. And apparently you can even make these items appear if you hit him on the sweet spot on his tail, which is another reference to how his tail can be severed for extra items in the games. Thanks SmashWiki. Even with items to help, I found myself struggling with this boss battle a lot. Rathalos will even end his tackle differently depending on whether you're on the ground or in the air. Oh, and look at that, you can even summon this boss as an assist trophy. Yeah, that's not broken or anything. Hey, remember that time before Ridley became a playable character? All those years of the is Ridley too big debate? Nowadays it's easy to laugh at the people who thought he couldn't make it in. But to be fair to those people, look at how massive this guy was in Brawl! So, you're trying to escape from an island that's about to explode. You hop in the Falcon Flyer, only to discover you're being chased by this big ass dragon you beat up earlier. The setup of this fight is just amazing. Like in his previous fights, he attacks using his tail, claws and by shooting fireballs, all while flying over the ship you're standing on. But then, after the halfway point, Ridley starts to aim some of his attacks on the Falcon Flyer itself. He'll try to smash it down, resulting in an instant KO if you don't jump in time, and he'll even try to drag it down with him while shooting fireballs at you. At low HP, he even flies further away from the flyer in between his attacks and leaves noticeably less time between them. You have to stay on your guard all the way through. This is what I love most about this battle, how Ridley manages to use his surroundings to his advantage, truly doing him justice as the intelligent space pirate he is. And when you combine that with a 2-minute timer, you get one of the most tense boss fights and one of my favorite moments in Subspace Emissary. While I love Giga Bowser for doing the turning into a giant monster thing, you gotta give credit to the guy that did it first. This battle is such fan service for Zelda fans. It has a lot of references to different games in it. Of course his look, weapons and tail weak point are all carried over from Ocarina of Time, but he also has some attacks referring back to Skyward Sword and Breath of the Wild. I might not bring it up too often, but I love the Zelda games, so this boss completely blew me away when I first played it. His specific weak point can be a problem for some people, but thankfully the game still throws a bone to the less vertically gifted characters. Most of his attacks leave him wide open either before or after using them, and unlike Giga Bowser, he actually jumps around the stage, which is again a perfect opportunity to strike if you can get a read on where he'll end up. This fight feels very satisfying to me. Compared to Dracula's human form, the weak point is at the same time easier to hit since it's bigger and closer to the ground, but also harder to hit since Ganon moves around so much. This makes every blow I land feel that much more powerful. This fight references one of my favorite gaming franchises, and gameplay wise it's incredibly fun and unique. Definitely my favorite from Ultimate's classic mode bosses. speaking of those classic mode bosses, is it just me or are these 6 really underused? Yeah, sure, you fight them all twice in World of Light, but in 80% of the classic modes you fight either Master or Crazy Hand at the end. Poor Giga Bowser is only fought by 2 people. Maybe it's because I fought the 2 hands so often, but I've gotten really tired of seeing these 2. Anyway, remember Smash 4? No matter what anyone says, Smash 4 will always have a special place in my heart for a lot of reasons. But for now I want to talk about one fight in particular. After the dumpster fire that's Wii U's classic mode on 5.1 or higher, you fight Master and Crazy Hand as usual. But then, Crazy Hand's glove rips open and morphs with Master Hand, creating Master Core. It's surrounded by a swarm of darkness, which will transform into more and more objects depending on the difficulty you're on. And after you've beaten all of them, you can finally say you've beaten classic mode on 9.0. Or maybe not. From 8.0 and onwards, you also have to face Master Fortress, which is the part that gave it a spot on my list. From here, this boss becomes a platforming challenge, as you have to navigate your way through the fortress while defeating shadow enemies and looking for different weak points to destroy. The last thing I want to praise this boss for is the music. It gets more and more intense as the fight goes on. And when you destroy the second heart, you get kicked out of the fortress, the music ramps up, and the game basically says, yeah, you probably only have 1 stock and 2 minutes left, but no pressure. This is one of the most stressful moments in Smash history, especially since dying here means you have to go through the entire classic mode again. But dealing that final blow is one of the most satisfying things I ever did. I still feel like Smash 4 is outclassed by Ultimate in pretty much every way, but Master Core will always stand out for me. If only you didn't have to go for that sucky classic mode. Let me set the stage here. You united a big group of heroes, defeated armies of villains, and entered the subspace. You prepared to take on Master Hand, only to find out he was being controlled all along by the real mastermind, Taboo. And before anyone could do anything, he eliminates your entire party. It's game over for the entire Nintendo universe. Or so Taboo thought. Thanks to King Dedede, the entire party gets revived. Truces are formed, and against all odds, everyone enters the Great Maze, preparing for the final battle. I want a second subspace emissary, man. So, after going through the Great Maze and fighting all the characters and bosses, again, you end up face to face with the embodiment of subspace. And oh hey Sonic, nice to see you here too. Oh wait, I get to use 6 characters for this? This'll be a walk in the park. Over. Yeah, don't let the 6 characters fool you. Even with his screens destroyed, he's still more than a worthy adversary. Remember those off waves he used to turn everyone into trophies? Yeah, that's a normal move he has. If you want to survive this one attack, you'll have to perform 3 well-timed spot dodges in a row. And that's just what this whole fight is. It's like the perfect run of Smash Bros. You can't make a single mistake. And it's even harder when you have to fight them at the end of the boss rush with only 1 character and with no items. I still remember beating Taboo for the first time, loudly celebrating at 7 AM and waking up my dad. I might not enjoy Brawl's fighting engine as much as I used to, but I'll always be grateful to this game for giving me great memories like these. And yet, Ultimate managed to top it. Alright, we're finally here. The reason I wanted to make this countdown. You guys might already know that I was slightly disappointed with World of Light, but the endgame more than made up for it. And the final fight against Galeem and Darkhon is my favorite boss battle in the series. The whole build-up was incredible, but to avoid this summary taking too long, let me give you the abridged version. You end up on a part of the map that's split between light and dark, and the only way to enter the true final battle is to defeat the same amount of spirits on both sides. Halfway during it, you have to fight both hands, and after beating them, they get freed and join your sides. And then, when you get to the end, oh my god, we get to control Master Hand. It's like that glitch in Melee, except not a glitch. But wait, the fight itself still hasn't even begun. First, you have to climb your way up while both deities try to slow you down. That's followed by a boss rush, and then the true final battle begins. Unlike boss battles against the hands, Galeem and Darkhon aren't working together. This is a 3-way free-for-all. The attacks from the one will hurt the other, and just like with Duon, you can guide the attacks from the one boss into the other. This really makes you feel like you're in the middle of a war between these two. Since the attacks were probably meant to be used against each other, most of them are more focused on damage rather than knockback. But don't let that fool you. They won't launch you for at first, but the damage will stack up very quickly. You might get free characters, but believe me, you'll need them. This is pretty much like fighting two taboos at the same time. There just isn't another boss in Ultimate or the whole Smash series that's as difficult or unique as this one. But when you combine that genius idea with the amazing gameplay, build-up, aesthetics and godlike music this fight brings along, you get one of my favorite final bosses in general that easily tops all previous entries. That is why the final battle against Galeem and Darkhon is my favorite Smash Bros boss of all time. Thanks for watching.